The air in the hospital room thinned as Dr. Gregory's expression shifted. My husband Nicholas gripped my hand with artificial concern, his wedding band digging into my skin. "It was just an accident, right, Olivia?" His voice carried a warning edge that made the nurse glance up from her clipboard. I stared at the ceiling, each breath igniting fire across my fractured ribs. 3 hours earlier, my mother-in-law Vanessa had stood at the top of our staircase, her lips curled into a smile I'd never forget, and pushed me with both hands. The impact of each hardwood step had painted my body with bruises that now bloomed beneath my hospital gown like a violent garden. "Tell them you tripped, dear," Vanessa urged, her designer handbag clutched against her cashmere sweater, voice dripping with manufactured concern. "You've always been somewhat clumsy." My name is Olivia. I'm 34 and a former interior designer. This is the story of how I turned a murder attempt into liberation. The monitor beside me beeped steadily as I remembered the moment with perfect clarity. I'd been carrying laundry upstairs when Vanessa appeared at the top, having let herself in with the key Nicholas had given her despite my repeated objections. Our argument about her unannounced visits escalated quickly. "This is my son's house," she'd sneered, stepping closer. "You're just the replacement wife. The first one knew her place." Before I could respond, her manicured hands connected with my shoulders. The push wasn't accidental. It was deliberate, calculated, and accompanied by a satisfied smile that now haunted me from across the hospital room. Mrs. Reynolds, the nurse, whose name tag read Heather, interrupted my thoughts. "I need to examine your injuries privately. Hospital policy." She gave Nicholas and Vanessa a pointed look. "I'm her husband," Nicholas protested, his jawline tightening. "And you both need to wait outside," Heather finished firmly. "Now please." Once they left, Heather's professional demeanor softened. "Olivia, I need you to be honest with me. These injuries are consistent with a fall, but the pattern suggests you were pushed. Did someone push you?" I hesitated. Nicholas would never believe me over his mother. Vanessa had spent the last 3 years systematically undermining me, and my husband remained willfully blind to it all. "I have proof," I whispered, surprised by my own courage. Heather leaned closer. "What kind of proof?" "Security cameras." My voice grew stronger. "I installed them 2 months ago after my jewelry started disappearing. I hadn't told Nicholas about them. I needed to know what was happening when I wasn't home. The stairs are covered by one of the cameras." Heather's eyes widened. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to my phone. I nodded, pulling up the security app with my uninjured hand. The footage was crystal clear. Vanessa's face twisted with malice, her hands extending, the deliberate push. My fall was brutal to watch, but what happened next was worse. Vanessa stood at the top of the stairs, watching me lie motionless at the bottom before calmly walking down, stepping over my body and making herself a cup of tea in my kitchen. She'd waited 15 minutes before calling Nicholas, and only then did she call for an ambulance. "Oh my God," Heather whispered, her professional composure cracking. "Olivia, I need to make a call. This is attempted murder." "Nicholas won't believe it," I said softly. "He never does." "He won't have a choice this time," Heather replied, her jaw set. "I'm calling the police. This isn't just domestic abuse. She waited before getting you help. She wanted you to be seriously injured." As Heather stepped out, I heard Vanessa's voice in the hallway. "Nicholas, darling, maybe we should look into putting Olivia in therapy. These accusations about me, her paranoid behavior with those cameras, it's not healthy." "I know, Mom." Nicholas's response made my heart sink. "Once she's better, we'll get her the help she needs." I closed my eyes, tears sliding down my cheeks. 3 years of gaslighting, of having my things moved or broken with Nicholas, telling me I must have misplaced them, of Vanessa's snide comments and Nicholas's dismissals. But this time was different. This time I had proof. Heather returned with 2 police officers. Through the small window in my hospital room door, I saw Vanessa's perfectly composed face crumble as they approached. Nicholas looked confused, then angry as one officer took out a notebook. "Mrs. Reynolds," Heather said, holding my phone, "would you like to press charges?" I took a deep breath, ignoring the pain in my ribs. "Yes," I said firmly. "Yes, I would." Vanessa's indignant screech echoed through the hallway as the officers began questioning her. "This is ridiculous. Nicholas, tell them. Tell them your wife is unstable." But Nicholas wasn't looking at his mother. He was staring at my phone screen, watching the footage play out in horrible clarity. His face had gone pale, his hands trembling as he watched his mother, the woman he'd always defended, try to kill his wife. The next few days passed in a blur of police statements, medical examinations, and uncomfortable silences. I was released from the hospital with strict instructions to rest and a prescription for pain medication that made the world feel slightly fuzzy around the edges. Nicholas insisted I come home, but I chose to stay with my sister Julia instead. After being discharged, Julia drove me to her house on the other side of town where I'd be staying during my recovery. "He let her have a key to your house without asking you," Julia fumed as she helped me settle into her guest room. "And he's been defending her behavior for 3 years. Olivia, I knew it was bad, but this—" I watched her arrange my medications on the bedside table, thinking about the past 3 years. The missing jewelry that Vanessa had claimed I must have misplaced. The family heirlooms that disappeared when she visited, only to show up in her house as things Nicholas gave her. The constant comments about my housekeeping, my cooking, my appearance, all met with Nicholas's standard response. "Mom's just trying to help." My phone buzzed again. Another message from Nicholas. "Please come home, we need to talk about this. Mom's been arrested and they're treating her like a criminal." "She is a criminal," Julia snapped, reading over my shoulder. "She literally tried to harm you intentionally." The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following week. The evidence was damning. Not just the security footage, but the hospital records showing Vanessa's deliberate delay in calling for help. The detective assigned to my case, a no-nonsense woman named Detective Reyes, had more questions. She'd given me her card at the hospital and called me the day after I was discharged to arrange a meeting at the police station. "Mrs. Reynolds, we found something interesting while executing the search warrant at your mother-in-law's house," she said, spreading photographs across the table. "Do you recognize these items?" My breath caught. Neatly laid out were all my missing possessions. My grandmother's sapphire necklace, my mother's pearl earrings, even my engagement ring from my first fiancé who had died in a car accident, something I'd tearfully searched for months ago. "She took them," I whispered. "All those times she said I was careless, that I lost things. We also found this." Detective Reyes slid another photo across the table. It was Vanessa's phone, open to a text conversation with Nicholas from 3 months ago. "Olivia's becoming a problem. She's not good enough for you. Remember Megan? She knew her place. We need to do something about this one." Megan, Nicholas's first wife, who had mysteriously fallen down the same stairs 5 years ago. She had survived, but moved away immediately after, divorcing Nicholas and refusing to speak to anyone about what happened. "We've contacted Megan," Detective Reyes said quietly. "She's willing to testify." The implications hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about me. Vanessa had done this before. And Nicholas, had he known? Had he suspected? That evening, Nicholas showed up at Julia's house. I wasn't surprised. He'd been to holiday gatherings at her place and knew exactly where she lived. "Olivia, please," he said when I agreed to talk to him on the porch. "You have to understand. Mom, she's not well. She needs help, not jail. If you drop the charges—" "Did you know?" I interrupted. "About Megan? About what your mother did to her?" His silence was answer enough. "They found my things, Nicholas. Everything she stole. Everything you told me I was careless enough to lose." My voice was steady despite the trembling in my hands. "The police found her text to you about me being a problem, about doing something about me." "I never thought she'd actually hurt you," he protested weakly. "She's my mother. And I'm your wife." The words burst out of me, years of suppressed anger finally breaking free. "You gave her a key without asking me. You dismissed every concern, every fear. You watched her steal from me, belittle me, break me down piece by piece, and you did nothing. You chose her over me every single time." "Olivia, no—" I cut him off. "I'm done. The police are reopening Megan's case. Your mother is going to face consequences for what she's done, and so are you." "What does that mean?" I pulled an envelope from my pocket, papers my lawyer had drawn up that morning. "It means I'm pressing charges against your mother for attempted murder and theft, and I'm divorcing you for conspiracy and emotional abuse." He stared at the envelope, his face draining of color. "You can't do this. We can work this out once Mom gets help." "Your mother pushed me down the stairs and watched me lie there injured for 15 minutes before calling for help. And you?" I laughed bitterly. "You told me I needed therapy for being paranoid. Well, guess what? The cameras I installed proved I wasn't paranoid at all." I stood up, ignoring the pain in my ribs. "The detective found your mother's diary during the search of her home, Nicholas. Pages and pages about how she got rid of Megan, how she was planning to get rid of me, and your texts encouraging her protective behavior. You're not innocent in this." His face crumpled, the facade of concerned husband finally cracking. "I'll lose everything. My job, my reputation." "You should have thought about that before you chose your mother over your wife's safety. Twice." I turned to go back inside, then paused. "Oh, and Nicholas?" "I'm keeping the house. It turns out attempting to harm your daughter-in-law is a great way to void any claim to property. Your lawyer can contact mine about the rest." I closed the door on his stunned face, leaning against it as Julia wrapped me in a gentle hug. "You did it," she whispered. "You're free." For the first time since my fall, I felt like I could breathe properly again. The truth was finally out, and neither Vanessa nor Nicholas could hurt me anymore. 6 months later, after a series of preliminary hearings and legal proceedings that had dominated my life since the incident, I sat in the courtroom watching Vanessa's carefully maintained composure crack as the judge delivered her sentence. 15 years for attempted murder, with additional charges for theft and the reopened case with Megan. The evidence had been overwhelming. The security footage, her diary detailing both attacks, and Megan's powerful testimony about her own experience. "She told me I was never good enough for her, Nicholas," Megan had testified, her hands shaking but her voice strong. "Then one day, after months of psychological abuse, she pushed me down those same stairs. When I tried to tell Nicholas, he said I was confused from the fall. I knew then I had to leave." Nicholas hadn't fared much better. His text messages and documented pattern of enabling his mother's behavior had led to charges of conspiracy and accessory after the fact. He'd lost his job at the law firm when the story broke, his reputation in shambles. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago, with the judge granting me full ownership of our house and a substantial settlement given the circumstances. Nicholas had been sentenced to 5 years probation and mandatory counseling. As the bailiff led Vanessa away, she turned to look at me one last time. The hatred in her eyes was still there, but now it was tinged with something else. Defeat. She'd lost everything. Her freedom, her social standing, and most importantly, her control. "You did the right thing," Detective Reyes said, touching my shoulder gently as we left the courthouse. We'd exchanged phone numbers early in the investigation, and she'd become both a professional ally and supportive presence throughout the legal proceedings. "Your case has encouraged 3 other women to come forward about similar experiences with their mothers-in-law. You've started something important here." I thought about those other women as I drove home from the courthouse to my newly renovated house. The first thing I'd done after the divorce was replace the stairs, not out of fear, but as a symbol of reclaiming my space. The security cameras stayed, though, a reminder that trusting my instincts had saved my life. Julia had helped me redecorate, removing every trace of Vanessa's influence. The stolen items she'd taken from me now sat proudly displayed in my bedroom, each one a testament to my resilience. My grandmother's sapphire necklace caught the light as I passed my dresser, no longer hidden in Vanessa's jewelry box. The doorbell rang. Megan, right on time for our weekly coffee meeting. We'd formed an unexpected friendship during the trial, bonding over our shared experiences and recovery. After connecting through Detective Reyes during the investigation, we'd begun meeting regularly to support each other through the legal process. "The house looks amazing," she said, settling onto my new sofa. "So different from when we were trying to please her," I finished, handing her a cup of coffee. I know, everything then had to be beige and proper. Now it's all about what makes me happy. Megan smiled, touching the bright throw pillow beside her. I did the same thing after I left. Painted my whole apartment purple just because I could. Nicholas hated purple. We shared a knowing look, both understanding the small acts of rebellion that helped us reclaim our lives. Have you heard? Megan asked, pulling out her phone. They're starting a support group for women with abusive in-laws. They want us to speak at their first meeting. I looked at the website she showed me. Breaking the Silence. Recognizing and responding to in-law abuse. The homepage featured resources, warning signs, and stories from survivors. We should do it, I said, surprising myself with my enthusiasm. If I had known about other cases like ours, maybe I would have installed those cameras sooner. Speaking of cameras, Megan grinned, that security company that supplied your system? They want to feature your story in their new domestic safety campaign. Apparently, their sales of indoor security cameras have tripled since your case made the news. I laughed, thinking about how Vanessa had always hated technology. She would hate knowing she's become a cautionary tale. Later that evening, after Megan left, I stood in my kitchen. My kitchen decorated my way, organized my way. I felt a profound sense of peace. The local news had called my case a watershed moment in recognizing in-law abuse. But for me, it was simpler than that. I trusted my instincts, protected myself, and refused to be silenced. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Reyes. Another case today. Woman installed cameras after reading about you. Caught her mother-in-law tampering with her medication. She's safe now. Thought you'd want to know. In the months since the trial, Detective Reyes had kept me updated on similar cases, maintaining the professional relationship we'd developed during the investigation. I smiled, running my hand along my new countertop. Vanessa had always criticized my choice of home decor, but now every bright color and modern fixture felt like a victory. I learned that sometimes the happy ending isn't about forgiveness or reconciliation. Sometimes it's about breaking free, finding your voice, and helping others find theirs. The support group meeting was scheduled for next week. My story would be the first one shared, not as a victim's tale, but as a roadmap for other women. How to recognize the signs, how to protect yourself, and most importantly, how to reclaim your life. My security cameras blinked quietly in their corners, now less about protection and more about remembrance. They had given me back my power, my voice, and my future. In the end, Vanessa's attempt to silence me had only made me louder, stronger, and more determined to ensure no other woman would suffer in silence as Megan and I had. As I got ready for bed that night, I caught my reflection in the mirror and saw something that had been missing during my years with Nicholas and Vanessa. Peace. I was finally, truly free. The word slammed into me like a physical blow. Take off the oxygen mask. Let her die. She's useless anyway. My mother's voice cut through the ambulance's wailing sirens with surgical precision, each syllable perfectly articulated despite the chaos around us. My father's harsh laugh followed. His expensive cologne somehow overpowered the antiseptic smell as he leaned closer to where I lay strapped to the gurney. "You're wasting resources," he said to the paramedic, not even bothering to lower his voice. "She's been nothing but a burden since the day she was born." The monitor beside me beeped frantically as my pulse spiked. Through the oxygen mask fogging with each desperate breath, I could see the paramedic's jaw tighten. His gloved hands never paused as he worked to keep me alive. "Sir, if you interfere again, I'll have security remove you both." My parents exchanged a look I'd seen 1,000 times before, contempt mixed with disappointment, their eyes communicating that I'd failed them yet again, simply by continuing to breathe. My name is Paige. I'm 34 and a single mother of 2. This is the story of how I turned my parents' attempt to suffocate me into the breath that finally shattered their perfect glass house. The ambulance hit a pothole, jostling the IV line in my arm. Each breath felt like swallowing fire. Pneumonia had ravaged my lungs for days before my body finally collapsed during my shift at the bookstore. My coworker had called 911. My parents had been contacted as my emergency contacts, a decision I was now watching backfire in real time. The hospital had called their number, still listed in my phone under "in case of emergency," from years ago when I had no one else to rely on. "She doesn't need that," my mother repeated, pearl earrings catching the flashing emergency lights as she gestured to the oxygen mask, always seeking attention. I tried to lift my hand to stop her, but my limbs felt weighted with concrete. The faces of my children flashed through my mind, Liam, 7, and Naomi, 5. If I died here, they would be left with these monsters who stood over me now, discussing my death like it was a convenience. The paramedic positioned himself between my parents and me. "Focus on me," he said, his voice cutting through their cruelty. "We're almost there." His name tag read David, but my parents' voices still reached me. "If she passes away here, maybe we'll all finally be free," my father said, adjusting his perfectly knotted tie as if attending a board meeting rather than his daughter's potential passing. Something sparked inside me then, a flickering ember buried beneath decades of their cruelty. Not this time, not like this. I forced air into my lungs, each breath a rebellion against their wishes. If I survived this night, and I would, my parents would learn what useless truly meant. The next few days in the hospital were a blur of tubes, bland food, and worried doctors. "You gave us quite a scare," a nurse told me, her kind eyes a stark contrast to my family's coldness. "You're stable now." Stable. The word felt foreign. I'd never been stable under my parents' roof, never stable in love, in safety, in belonging. "Where are they?" I asked, my throat raw from the intubation. Her jaw tightened. "Your parents." They caused such a scene that security removed them. They didn't wait to see you admitted. They left. The nurse's words held no pity for them, only disgust. She patted my shoulder. "They don't deserve you." For a moment, tears stung my eyes, not from heartbreak, but because a stranger's simple kindness meant more than anything my parents had ever said to me. My children visited the next day, their small faces pale with worry. My neighbor Maria had brought them, the same woman who watched them during my bookstore shifts. "We've been saying prayers for you," she whispered, squeezing my hand before giving me privacy with my kids. Liam crawled onto the bed, clutching my hand. "Mommy, Grandma told us you were too weak to live," he whispered, his voice cracking. "That's not true, right?" I forced myself to smile, stroking his dark hair. "It's not true, baby. I'm here. I'll always be here." Naomi frowned, her tiny fists clenched. "Grandpa said you'd give up like trash, but you didn't." I pulled them both close, my chest burning with something stronger than pain, rage. How dare they poison my children's minds? How dare they stand in the same room as my kids and try to turn them against me? The doctors wanted me to rest, but rest wasn't an option. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard my mother's shrill laugh, my father's cruel voice echoing through the ambulance. They didn't just want me gone, they wanted my children to believe I was worthless. When I was discharged a week later, I didn't go home to collapse in bed. I went home to our small apartment on Maple Street to plan, my mind focused on one thing: justice. I started with conversations. News traveled fast in our small Connecticut town of Westbrook. Neighbors had heard about the ambulance scene. People had seen my parents storming out of the ER, shouting about me being a burden. Even strangers were disgusted. A cashier at the grocery store whispered, "You're the woman they tried to harm in the ambulance, aren't you?" Everyone's talking about it. At first I wanted to shrink away, but then I realized their own arrogance had done my work for me. They couldn't shut their mouths, couldn't hide their disdain, and now everyone knew. Still, gossip wasn't enough. My parents had always relied on reputation, on making themselves the polished couple everyone admired. Mom, the philanthropist with her charity galas. Dad, the business titan who donated to every political campaign. If I wanted real revenge, I had to take what they valued most and drag it into the light. The opportunity arrived sooner than expected. My parents were hosting their annual fundraiser gala. The crown jewel of the social season, invitations had gone out to every business owner, politician, and socialite within 50 miles. My mother had even bragged to my sister Quinn about the designer gown she'd purchased, a shimmering testament to her hard-earned success. I learned about all these details from Quinn herself, who had called to check on me after hearing what happened. Unlike our parents, she still had a conscience, though she remained too afraid to stand against them openly. They thought the night would be theirs. I decided it would be mine. For weeks, I gathered evidence. Medical records from my insurance provider, the ambulance report obtained through proper channels with the help of a paralegal friend, statements from the paramedics. I tracked down David through the ambulance company, explaining who I was. He remembered me instantly. David, who had protected me that night, looked me in the eye and said, "If you want me to testify, I'll do it." In 15 years, I've never seen anything like it. Parents begging us to let their daughter suffocate. His words on paper, signed and notarized, became my weapon. I went further, speaking to everyone they had hurt. Extended family they'd cut off, neighbors they'd manipulated, employees they'd mistreated. I gathered a quiet army of witnesses, all holding fragments of truth. Alone, they were whispers. Together, they were a thunderclap. The night of the gala arrived in late June, perfect early summer weather gracing the Westbrook Country Club where my parents held court. I didn't sneak in through the back. I walked in through the grand entrance, Liam and Naomi at my sides, our heads held high. Gasps followed us. Eyes widened. Conversations halted mid-sentence. We walked through the grand foyer and into the glittering ballroom, where the event was in full swing. The ballroom sparkled under crystal chandeliers, their light bouncing off marble floors and designer gowns. Laughter mixed with clinking glasses, the air thick with expensive perfume and practiced charm. My parents stood at the center of it all. Mom radiant in her silver gown, Dad commanding in his tuxedo, Quinn at their side like a treasured possession. My younger sister had always been the compliant one, the perfect daughter who never questioned their cruelty. The moment they saw me, their smiles fractured. "What is she doing here?" Quinn hissed, not bothering to lower her voice. I didn't flinch. I walked through the crowd, my children's small hands clutched in mine. The whispers began instantly. "That's their daughter, isn't it?" The one from the ambulance. "She almost passed away and they tried to stop treatment." My father attempted to recover, forcing a booming laugh. "Ah, our daughter! We're so glad she could join us. Everyone. Family first, right?" My mother chimed in, her voice syrupy with false sweetness. "She exaggerates sometimes, but we love her dearly." The crowd's murmurs sharpened. I could feel the tension building like dry tinder waiting for a spark, so I lit the match. "Love?" I stepped forward, my voice clear and steady. "You call begging paramedics to remove my oxygen mask love? You call screaming, 'Let her pass away, she's useless anyway,' in an ambulance love?" Gasps rippled through the room. Conversations froze. My parents went pale. "She's lying," my father barked. "Don't listen to her." I pulled out the folder I'd prepared, the papers inside organized chronologically. Not lying, documented. I handed the first sheet to the nearest guest, a statement from David, the paramedic who saved my life. He heard every word. So did half the ER staff when you stormed in shouting that I was a waste of resources. The crowd shifted, shock transforming into disgust. People physically backed away from my parents, their carefully constructed facade crumbling under the weight of truth. My mother stammered, clutching her pearls. "We were upset. We didn't mean—" Naomi's small voice cut through the room like a blade. "Grandma said Mommy was weak and should just go away forever. Grandpa called her trash." The silence that followed was absolute. Every pair of eyes fixed on my parents, not with admiration but with revulsion. Quinn looked like she wanted to disappear, her perfect family image disintegrating in real time. I took a deep breath and delivered the final blow. "You built this entire life on reputation, on people believing you were good, generous, admirable. But this is who you really are. People who would rather bury their daughter than face the truth." I stepped closer, meeting their eyes directly. "You wanted me gone? Congratulations. Tonight you're the ones who disappear." The room erupted, not with applause, but with condemnation. Guests whispered, some openly jeering, others shaking their heads in disgust. A businessman set down his glass with a decisive thud. "I can't work with people like you." A woman in diamonds hissed, "Monsters!" My parents stood frozen in the center of the storm, their faces drained of color, their empire of pride collapsing with every whispered word. I didn't stay to watch them drown. I took Liam and Naomi's hands and walked out into the night. The cool breeze touched my face, fresher than the recycled lies of that ballroom. They had tried to suffocate me in an ambulance. Tonight, I made sure they suffocated in the one thing they couldn't escape: truth. And this time, I breathed freely. 3 months later, I received the final paperwork confirming my parents had been permanently removed as potential guardians for my children. Their attempts to gain custody after the gala humiliation had failed spectacularly, with the judge citing their documented behavior in the ambulance. My sister Quinn had finally broken free as well, cutting financial ties with them and starting to rebuild our relationship. As for my parents, they sold their mansion and moved to Florida, their social standing in Westbrook permanently destroyed. Some victories aren't about revenge, but about making sure toxic people can never hurt you again. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.